Hey, PJ here with the Web Mavericks. And if you're not familiar, we also run BizGrow Networking. And BizGrow Networking is something that came about because there was a need. And we do different events. We're not a weekly group, but we meet monthly at different places, sometimes twice a month. And what we do with BizGrow Networking is we do normal networking. We go around the room, we get to know each other. We'll have some questions, sometimes, about marketing, what they're struggling with, what they're doing, all that stuff. But then in the end, we teach free marketing skills to the group, and we want to help them grow. But I've had a lot of requests to record the trainings that I've done. So we're doing that as we go along and posting them. And we're going back to a day when we were talking about what makes successful posts, successful ads, successful videos on social media. So we're going to cover that today. And, you can go back and look at some of the other videos about, some different things you should do to be successful on social media. We talked about that previously. But we'll talk today about, what is it that makes one post, or specifically, it really can tell with an ad because ads have call to actions in it. What really makes one succeed over the other? And that's what we're going to cover here today. So let's take a look at that. We'll dive in deeper here. So the very first thing we talk about is the dog whistle secret. And if you don't know what a dog whistle is, a dog whistle is a whistle that when you blow into it, to me and you, sounds like nothing. But it has a certain frequency that's a higher pitch that only dogs can hear. You know, and that's one of the first problems when people do ads, when people do posts. They try to talk to everybody. They try to do generic ads. Now there's background ads and stuff you can do, and we're not going to dive into that. We're just going to talk about when you're trying to get engagement and you're trying to get an ad to work, what makes it specific. That's what we're talking about today, right? And, a lot of people have a product, a service, and I try to ask them, well, who is it for? And they say, well, it works for everybody. Well, it may, but marketing wise, that's a terrible thing to do. There's a very important principle when it comes to marketing. And it says, it goes like this: when you try to talk to everybody. When you run ads or you market for everybody, you really talk to nobody. You're just vanilla. You're plain. It doesn't speak to them. When you get very specific, the best ads, the best posts in the world that for engagement are ones that are going to make people think it was written or you're talking just for them. Like you made that ad just specifically for them and nobody else. It's the biggest thing when people think that, oh, my phone is listening, Alexa's listening, and you start hearing stuff about what you want. That's just good advertising. And there's so much that goes into it. I'm not going to get deep into it. I mean, for instance, Facebook tracks 54,000 different data points on everybody. They have 54,000 things that they make up what you might want, and that's how they predict what to show you and stuff like that. But you want people to hear your message. You want to be in the crowd. There's so much advertising out there that when you're trying to make it for everybody, it really ends up being for no one, right? And this is just an example of how most people do it. Especially, I talk a lot about opportunity cost. People try to figure out their own stuff. They try to do their own social media. They try to do their own ads. They try to do their own website, and it takes time to really become an expert at that. And if you're wasting that time, you're missing out. And the average person, when they try to do that, they think, oh, I got to make something that everybody's going to love. Right. And then they come away going, selling is hard because, I'm not getting any traction and nobody's interacting with it. Right. They're not getting the results they want. But when we use the dog whistle approach, we make ads, we make posts that are specific towards a particular avatar, a particular niche, a particular audience. Right. They get much better responses because they're custom tailored. And, I'll get deeper into that at some point, but we're just going to go over the lesson here today, right? And you're not talking about everything you sell. You want to talk about a specific problem you solve, that one specific problem. Maybe you have lots of products and services, but to be effective, you want to talk about one thing that you're solving to one particular person. And we have a whole course on how to get your perfect audience, your perfect niche, your perfect client, and that's who you want to be targeting. You'll hit other people by that, but the more specific, the more effective it is. It's better off to only target 10% of the population and get a success rate than target 100% and you don't get anywhere. And that's what happens with auto people. And a lot of that, you want to go into what they are, but helping you to find your perfect audience, niche, or client, you want to look at what product or service are you offering that's solving a problem, what that problem is, and then you want to look at, well, what is the market out there for it? There has to be a market. If you're selling something that nobody wants, then it doesn't matter, and then where's your price point? So if you're selling something that's just outrageous, now there are ways to increase value. But if you don't increase value and you're just offering too much, but your sweet spot is right where you're going to find the product, the market, and the price, and that's where you're going to find your perfect audience. So, how do you pick that? And it comes down to here's three, the three parts I was just talking about. You have market demand. You want a place where there's a growing demand, if possible. Where a better way of saying that is there has to be a need for it. A desire, even better. And your product should be something that you're interested in, has some expertise in. I mean, if you hate the product or the service you're trying to push, it's going to show, and it makes it really hard. And then, there has to be a practicality that people can afford it, right? So when you get those three things, you find your sweet spot, and that's really where we're starting to look at, right? So what makes up a successful post? A successful ad, anything like that. The very first thing, what not to do, is speak in general terms. Don't be specific. Just talk like fluff, and talk about just you and your cool products and your features. Talk about you. That nobody likes that, right? You want to talk about tons and tons of things you could do. You could do everything. It solves every problem. It does this, right? You leave nothing to the imagination. You tell them everything so they think they understand it. Right? And you make huge claims and promises, crazy the better, especially, you see a lot of this stuff for jobs. Oh, I started a second Instagram that makes me $10,000 a day and stuff. Actually, some of those are possible, but it just sounds outrageous and it turns people off, right? But, you can engage clients when you've done some research and know who you're addressing, who's it going. You'd be very focused on the specifics, your video, your copy, your ad. You make sure the ideas flow, and you stay very clear and just on that topic. You don't talk about a whole bunch of stuff. If you have other ones, you make other posts, other videos. You stay right on topic, right? And you want to make sure that that what the benefit is. What problem are you solving? Making it very clear. Clarity is important there. And make believable claims. Don't be outrageous. Even if you could help someone, spend 25 cents and make $1 million an hour, give them a journey or something that they can believe. It's much better. It's a huge great marketing principle. Always under promise and over deliver. It's the best thing you could do. All right. So it comes back to, writing a story, and you want to start with a mindset. This is a great story that I talked about, and I've talked about this in a lot of my classes. And it's the story of Captain John Raid. Now, Captain John Raid was a fisherman in the Northeast, and everybody would have all these fancy nets and equipment and radar and fish finders and all this. And every day he would just go out with using a fishing pole and his boat, and that was it. And every day he always caught more than anybody else. He always caught his limit. And then a reporter actually was going around asking, who's the best fisherman? Who's the best fisherman? It was John Raid. That's what everybody said. So the reporter went and talked to him after he retired, and he said, how come he was so much better all the time when he didn't have all the fancy equipment, right? And his response was amazing. He said, when fishermen go out there to fish, they think like fishermen. They buy all the latest stuff. He said, when I go out to fish, I think like the fish. And that's very important. You want to think like your perfect customer. An amazing story. So, we want to get back to looking at your perfect audience. What is your niche? What is your perfect client? What would they be thinking? Try to put yourself in their point of view, right? And you want to create posts that make the viewer feel that they're understood. You want to speak in their language. Um, you know, you want to talk about solving the problem. Don't talk about all the fancy things your product or service can do. Talk about the solution. People go searching, they go looking because they're looking for a solution to their problem, right? And then be obsessed with service. Overhelp them. Do more. Go out of your way. Again, under promise and over deliver, right? And I always thought the definition of a niche is cool: being or connected to one particular person, group, or place. Just stay on your message, stay in your niche. Now, once we find that, now it's very important, and there's a whole system involved in this that we talk about. It's we talk about the Maverick marketing system, and ads, social media. They're all parts of it. How you deliver stuff. But everything, there's 3 core concepts. And this is why my ads all the time outperform most of my customers. There's 3 parts that go into it. There's the hook, the story, and the offer. But we're going to go into deeper about the anatomy of this. So we're talking here, part of the hook is what they see, what the image is. Another thing that they see is the headline. Both 1 and 2 are the hook. What is your headline? What is your picture? What is it that they see your ad or your post and it makes them stop and want to read the rest of it, right? Now, if 1 and 2 are done correctly, they read the copy. They don't even get to that. And the copy is part of your story, right? So it's hook, story, offer. So the story has to relate to them. So, you're going to lose 10 pounds in a week. That's a headline. That's a hook. But how? Is it, we're going to eat a tapeworm and it's going to eat our stuff. People don't want that. They want to hear and relate to what's going on, and that's part of the story. And then you get them to the end. So it never fails. Anytime an ad doesn't work, it's always the hook, the story, the offer. The offer may be too much or whatever. So we do most of things that we will go all over the place. And, a lot of people will run an ad and that's it. We automatically, this is a minimum. When we run ads, we start with 3 different pictures, right? And then we start with 3 different headlines. And then we'll come up with... usually 10 different headlines and 10 different sets of copy, right? And we'll mix them up. So we'll have at least 30 different versions of an ad to start. That is like the minimum we use. And then, we'll run small little amounts, maybe $5 or stuff, and we'll let the audiences vote which ones work. If something isn't engaging, we don't work it. If some are sort of working, maybe we'll swap out a picture, maybe we'll change stuff around, we'll tweak it. And usually within a week or 2, we'll get down to a couple that are just hitting and firing, and we just throw those other ones away. And that's the whole point. We look at hook, we look at the story, we look at the offer. Anytime an ad doesn't work, it's one of the 3, right? So looking at, just to give you a little bit of this, the hook shows some curiosity, like how to lose 20 pounds without exercising more than 10 minutes a day. I'd like to do that. So then we give them a story that demonstrates that you understand that. So I used to go to the gym 5 days a week, but nothing seemed to change. At the Forge, I lost more weight going only twice a week. That's a story. I can relate to that. Okay, so you went there and a half it. And then the offer is something that makes them want to engage with you. So Mike's Supermom and Superdad program at the Forge has an end of summer special that will get rid of that 20 pounds before summer's gone. That's something that's an offer that says, hey, we want to take advantage of this. It's time sensitive. Right? So the hook is the creative. It's something that stops them. It makes them want to read, right? The story is what engages them, and it has empathy to it. So it says, they could see themselves in that. And then the offer is something that makes them want to take action. right? And there is a little thing called a sub hook, and that's kind of just a lead, and we can use that to sometimes get some extra juice out of it. So now I just want to show you what to do, and we did this here with how the Web Mavericks builds audiences. So we used to do a lot of stuff what we call ad hacking and funnel hacking stuff. We would look at successful, and we could still do this. There's a lot of stuff like SimilarWeb is a program. There's stuff like there's all kinds of programs that'll track and tell you what the best ad of your competitors is, what their landing page is, and all that stuff. But we have programs now that do this so much faster. And this is pretty much the end of the presentation we used in the class, but I am going to show you some of these programs real quick. So this is one like if we were a plumber, we can come in here, and I have these programs that literally search millions and millions of successful ads. So we can tell this is a plumbing one. I just pulled that up real quick. We can go in here and it'll tell me exactly, let me blow this up here for a minute. So we have programs that will actually go out there and look at all the stuff that's already ran, and we can pull up details and see what happened, how long it's been running, what exactly, different stuff they can use, and what the best headlines that were on here. And it narrows stuff down to us. So we can use stuff that's already out there, that's already been proven that the pictures work. The difference, and we don't use exact stuff. What we do is we have AI searches this stuff and converts it into something similar, and then we kind of tweak it from there. We have, let me show you another one. Here's another program that we use that it'll go out and it'll scrape all kinds of videos and stuff, right? And we can see which ones are working, and we can pull in and say, what happened, and we can get all kinds of, there's actually printouts that have statistics, how long it's running, what it's doing, what pain relief are they doing, what are they doing here? There's all kinds of different stuff. We can see all the video, and so we can already see what works and what the most successful ads are and what they're doing. So so in conclusion for this lesson, so the reason that what we do and we're trying to help other people do is anytime that you're running an ad or you're making a post, you want to make sure that you have a good hook, a good story, a good offer. If you don't have any one of those three, and it won't work. And the funny thing about this is you could have a crappy product, and if you have good marketing, good hook story, offer, you could be successful. But nobody with a bad ad or a bad hook story offer sells a good product. That's how important it is. We have probably about 5 different programs now that we use that search stuff that has already looked. So if you're looking to save time and you want the Web Mavericks to help you, we'd be happy to, because we can, we've invested heavily in a lot of different stuff that can help. And that's how we make ads successful, because we target the right people. We do multiple versions so that hook, story, offer, we interchange them so that we can see what's going on. And that's how we succeed. It's actually not that complicated. You need to know what the formula is. The formula is hook, story, offer. There's one little aspect that I didn't talk about this that we'll talk in another class, but it's also important where you send them. The landing page, the funnel, where they're going once you have them take an action, and how. And there's automations we can set up. There's a lot more to it, but the basics of how to make it successful comes down to knowing who you're targeting and then having the right hook, story, and offer. If you have any questions, you want to know more detail, I'm PJ with the Web Mavericks. Just reach out. We give advice for free.